Hey, this is Randall Bapst from UXstars.com, and today I'm going to read a brief excerpt for you based on a discussion we had in yesterday's book club, where we coincidentally came across a section that was quite relevant to today's time and interests. The section we had gone over has to do with the presidential elections in the United States and a famous case about the importance of UX in helping people make their choices when casting their ballots. This excerpt that I'm going to read is from Tragic Design, The Impact of Bad Product Design and How to Fix It by Jonathan Shariat and Cynthia Saucier. Special thanks to Jonathan for stopping by our book club. We hope to see you again sometime. Okay, here we go. Here's a little bit of information about the United States election system. The fate of a nation. In 2000, U.S. presidential election, there was a very close race between two leading party candidates, George W. Bush and Al Gore. The race was neck and neck, with half the voters backing the Republican candidate, while the other half were for Al Gore, the Democratic nominee. In the U.S., each state carries a certain number of electoral votes. Voters cast their ballots, and the winning party in each state gets those votes, i.e., they vote for people to vote on their behalf. The election had run its course, and the votes were being counted. It was an exciting thing to watch. A few states would go to Bush, and then a few would go to Gore. It carried on this way until it became clear that the deciding factor would be Florida. Florida was a swing state, meaning that the two major political parties had a similar level of supporters among the voters. The final tally showed just how even that split was. That night, it was announced that George Bush had won in Florida by a count of just 1,784 votes. Florida state law required an automatic recount due to the small margin. After a long, drawn-out recount process, the court's decision came in the case of George Bush versus Gore. It was decided that Bush had the victory by an amazingly small margin of just 537 votes out of the 6 million that were cast. After the election, the controversy continued. One of the major contributing factors was the butterfly ballot. This is where bad design played a substantial role and potentially changed the course of an entire nation. In the center are holes for voters to punch through to vote for the corresponding candidate. Take a look at this figure and guess which hole you'd have to punch if you wanted to cast your vote for Al Gore. As you can see, George Bush lines up with this arrow here. But a certain number of people ended up voting for Pat Buchanan because they thought that Gore was the second one. If you are like us, you chose the second hole and only saw the arrows. According to the New York Times, in Palm Beach County, where the butterfly ballot was used, up to 5,310 people were probably confused by the design and unintentionally voted for Buchanan. The design also confused Bush voters, but only 2,600 voters made that mistake. Even if he benefited from this mistake, this is how Pat Buchanan reacted during an interview. When I looked at that ballot on election night, it was very easy for me to see how someone could have voted for me in the belief they voted for Al Gore. Furthermore, an unknown number of voters may have caught their mistake and punched a second time. Many of these ballots were thrown out because of the invalid double vote. The design of the voting ballot was confusing, and even if it caused only one person to miscast their vote, it's prejudicial. It is the right of everyone of voting age in a democratic system to have their say in who should govern them. If it had happened the other way around and the erroneous votes had gone in favor of the Democrats, it would have been an equal injustice. The design of the butterfly ballot has a few key failures. First, the Gestalt theory of grouping tells us that people perceive grouped items as related. On the butterfly ballot, there are two perceived groups, the left side and the right side. This is why punching in the third hole for the second candidate on the left is very confusing. Furthermore, there should be easy recovery from user errors. Nowhere on the ballot are there instructions on how to use the ballot or what you should do if you accidentally select the wrong candidate. The person who designed the ballot was Teresa Lepore of Palm Beach, election official. Did she design absentmindedly? Is she to blame? She actually did design the ballot with her users in mind. Quote, being that I'm involved with a federal task force for blind and handicapped users, I'm particularly sensitive to the needs of those citizens that fall into those categories. Teresa Lepore told ABC News Good Morning America in an exclusive interview, Palm Beach County has a lot of elderly voters. I was trying to make the ballot so that it would be easier for the voters to read, which is why we went to the 2-page, now known as the butterfly ballot. Let us recall the old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Lepore had good intentions. She had her users in mind. So where did she go wrong? People need to take some responsibility as well for what they do, Lepore told the show's host. Looking back, maybe we should have made it clear that the presidential candidates were on 2 pages. I don't know. Again, I can't go back and second guess because it's something that's done. She is right that it is almost impossible to know beforehand what will go wrong in a design or how users will perceive what you think is communicated clearly. That is exactly why user testing exists. Lepore said she had 25 lawsuits against her, along with many angry letters. The blame, however, is in the broken way these designs are created. The state should have hired a designer who knew how to create a usable design and not relied on an election official. When design isn't valued and made a priority, it fails, just like safety or any other important part of a project that we so quickly rush over when deadlines approach. In this case, that failure had potentially world-changing consequences. If ballot design is of particular interest to you, make sure to visit the Center for Civic Design at civicdesign.org. They have guides to teach how best to design usable ballots. A lot of the advice is quite basic. Use lowercase, avoid centered type, use big type, support navigation with pagination. But other recommendations are not as obvious. Avoid party icons. Right at the top, how to change a vote. Make sure to stop by the showcases of before and after redesigns. So in conclusion, this clearly shows the importance of doing some user testing because no matter how good you think the design is, you can have some unanticipated results. I hope to see you stop by our book club sometime. For more information, stop by uxstars.com. See you later.